Hey, what's up, guys? Andrew from American Musical Supply here, coming to you via Zoom, joined by Drew from UA. How you doing, Drew?
I'm doing great, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, and our pleasure. Well, Drew's here to tell us about Luna, which is an exciting product from Universal Audio. And specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about the Luna 1.1 update, which has just dropped. But before we do that, we're gonna get into talking about like what Luna is and why you might want to consider using it. So backing up a little bit, Universal Audio has a history of creating hardware that runs DSP, and that DSP is able to take advantage of their plugins, which are high-quality emulations of analog recording equipment from some of the golden days of recording, I guess you could say. And these plugins allow you to take advantage of these classic sounds and bring them to your productions. So, Drew, why is Luna necessary then? If all this functionality was present in Universal Audio interfaces, why Luna?
Well, typically with native recording, you're having to fiddle with things like buffer sizes. And when you're recording, you need the buffer to be low. And then when you're mixing, you can up the buffer. And you're typically relying on some sort of low latency monitoring system, depending on the DAW. And, our solution to that was an app called Console. And Console was the application that controlled the DSP in your Apollo. It controlled your cues. It controlled the monitoring. And that worked great, right? Because you could use Console, you could use an Apollo with any DAW that you wanted to, and you had that low latency experience. But there were a couple problems. It meant you had to toggle back and forth between two different applications, and maybe there was you had to replicate some effects so that the playback sounded the same as the input, and so forth and so on. So we decided to try and solve that, and the most comprehensive way to do that is to create our own recording application, and that is Luna. And Luna creates a system that leverages the DSP in that Apollo, as you mentioned, to run these analog emulations, to do that with low latency, to create that immediacy and that intimacy and that connection to the music, because latency is just kind of a inspiration killer. But then we also wanted to leverage the CPU. These powerful modern CPUs. So Luna is a native app, and the two together created an environment where you didn't have to think about latency. You didn't have to switch between two different applications. You didn't have to worry about any sort of low latency monitor mode. There's no buffer settings in Luna. It just takes care of everything for you. So it's just the most comprehensive and most immediate music production environment out there. We'd like to think.
Wow, sounds very exciting. So you've created an environment where we don't need to have a third-party DAW now. You can just purchase a Universal Audio interface, download Luna from the website, get it all installed, and then you have access to whatever plugins you own, along with, I can still use my third-party plugins inside of Luna?
Yeah, correct. So, first of all, let's get this out there right now. Luna's free, right? Luna is a free application that comes with your Thunderbolt Apollo. If you're running the Mac OS, Luna is Mac only at this time. So yeah, it's free. And yeah, you can use all of your UAD DSP plugins, either in the input path, so you can record through them, record with them at low latency. You also can use them for mixing, of course. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, Andrew, you have access to all of your audio units plugins that you already have, as well as audio units instruments. So you're not going to miss out on anything that you're accustomed to by checking out Luna.
That's cool. So I also understand there is something called Luna extensions that you're offering. Can you tell us a little bit about those and what they are? What do they do?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the idea is to harness the DSP in your Apollo for those low latency paths. DSP is still king when it comes to low latency paths, but we also recognize that modern CPUs are very powerful, and so we developed this new technology called Luna extensions, and these are native processes, so they're handled by the CPU. They don't use your DSP, and they're integrated into Luna's mixer. This has multiple benefits. We're harnessing your CPU, we're putting that to use, but we're also creating an environment where you can apply, for example, tape, right? Oxide, the Oxide tape extension is one of the free extensions that come with Luna, and it allows you to get the authentic sound of analog tape directly onto your tracks. And we also have a Neve extension, which is a paid option in Luna that allows you to bring Neve 80 series console summing into Luna's environment. This is really adds a lot of sort of vibe and mojo to your mixes. So you combine these two, and that's another one of the pieces of Luna is the sonic discussion to have, which is we wanted to create an environment where the tools really impacted the audio in a meaningful way and really brought something to the table. Most DAWs are just generic digital recording and playback devices. We wanted Luna to have some soul and to have some vibe. And by making these tools available in the mixer very quickly and easily, you can impart really authentic analog character very easily.
Well, that's cool. So what about if I'm someone who uses a lot of Midi in my productions, like maybe virtual instruments or, take advantage of sample playback, that kind of thing? Is that something that Luna's able to handle?
Yeah, Luna has extensive MIDI capabilities. We have an instrument track that format that functions as an instrument track for VIs, but also as a MIDI track for playing external MIDI instruments. So we definitely are understand the needs of the people using MIDI heavily. Luna, in fact, comes with an instrument, a Luna instrument called Shape, and it is a multi-instrument toolkit, kind of like your old motif or something, keyboard that had like a whole bunch of different sounds in it. It's 10 gigs of record ready sounds, everything, drum kits, acoustic drum kits, electronic drum kits, basses, synths, pads, all sorts of stuff. It even comes with a light version of our Ravel piano. So lots of Luna instruments, discussion to have there, Shape being one of them, but also your audio units instruments. So any audio units instruments that you have, we're talking all the popular stuff out there, the Native Instruments stuff, all of that works in Luna. And in fact, it actually works in Luna even better than in any other DAW because of our ARM or ARM, accelerated real-time monitoring, you are able to quickly and easily play your audio units instruments through UAD processing without having to think about it and without incurring any latency penalties like you would in another DAW where you have to have that buffer set higher. So,
wow, that sounds pretty cool. So, what's the big buzz about Luna 1.1? Luna's been out for a few months now, and it's gathering it's building a user community, and obviously UA is seeking to further that with this new release. So tell us, what are some of the features that people have requested, and what are you bringing to the table?
Yeah, so Luna 1.0 had a unique structure in that it used a database.
Mm-hmm.
It had autosave. It was constantly saving in the background, and it was using a database. And so one of the things that we're bringing out with 1.1 is adding to those features. So we're rolling out what we're calling session versions, and this is like you'd expect to be able to signpost various points in your production by creating different versions. And we also have a feature called bookmarks, which allows you to timestamp a point in the history of your project that you might want to come back to. But session versions is, just as you'd expect, you have an initial version, and then you come to a point where you're going to make some pivotal decision, and you decide that, hey, I better do a save, a save here to create a different branch in the database. And this is really cool because it keeps it all inside of your Luna session. Unlike other DAWs who maybe when you do a save as, it creates a separate file on your hard drive, and you have to be careful to not lose them or not move them around too much. With Luna, it's all inside the database. So it's all self-contained. Luna uses this package. So if you wanted to send a project to your friend, all you have to do is, zip up the project and Dropbox it to them. And you can rest assured that they're going to get all of the files that they need to work on that project. So session versions is a big part of that. And that's in the 1.1 update that we just released. Also in the 1.1 update is another highly requested feature, which are track groups. As you'd expect, you want to be able to edit, multi-track material, drum tracks, for example, multi-mic'd guitars or stacked background vocals. You can group them together, and you can choose whether or not they're grouped in the timeline or the mixer. And you can also choose to include their inserts. So if you wanted to have to be able to control multiple EQs or multiple compressors spread out across multiple tracks, you can link those controls as well. The third major feature for Luna 1.1 is MIDI clock output. So in the settings area of Luna, there's a new MIDI tab, and it allows you to send either MIDI pattern or MIDI song information out your MIDI interfaces or to other applications. So you can use Luna with Ableton or use Luna with Pro Tools by sending MIDI clock out to other DAWs or to external hardware. So you can synchronize those oscillators on your modular synth with the tempo of your song. And of course, it'll follow the tempo changes and so forth. So those are the three big features for 1.1. But really 1.1 is kind of a relaunching of Luna in a matter of speaking, because now with session versions and track groups, we're really fleshing out the core feature set and really feeling like Luna's starting to hit its stride and get the features that people want and need. So we're kind of using it as an opportunity for people to sort of relook at Luna and look at it in that way. So, and of course, there are other things that are a part of it. So make sure you check out the Luna release page on uaudio.com to look for all of the details for the release.
Right. So, I mean, if I was someone looking at switching platforms, obviously, right? Like, I mean, that's a pretty big commitment from a digital audio workstation, I guess, perspective. Like if you're used to recording in one program and you wanted to switch to another. So is Luna something that's really at the forefront of Universal Audio's mind and very active in development currently, and like something that the company's looking to continue developing throughout the upcoming years?
Yeah, Luna has its own dedicated team for its development. So it's a core group of developers and product designers that are super passionate about creating the best, environment for musical creation. We've been averaging updates about every 3 weeks. And they're on fire and been really like updating it at a very rapid pace. And 1.1 is sort of the culmination of everything that they've worked on since 1.0. And we've got big plans for Luna. We've developed these Luna extensions and Luna instruments. We've developed these architectures, and the idea is to feed those architectures with new products in the coming months and years. So it's definitely a long-term plan, and it's a long-term play. Of course, we're not neglecting, the plugin side. We're continuing to develop plugins that are available on the UAD platform for all DAW users. But yeah, Luna is where we feel like we can make the most impact in creating that environment for users.
Well, that sounds pretty cool. So on the other end of the spectrum, what if I'm someone who's looking to get into recording, and I'm thinking, okay, well, if I'm looking at my shopping list, so to speak, I've got to buy an interface, and I want to, you get a program, some sort of software that I can use to record. Like if I chose, like, I want to get into Luna and recording with Luna, what do I need? Can I use any audio interface with Luna, or do I need any specific technology?
Yeah. So the one thing about Luna is, this is why we call it Luna Recording System and not just a DAW. Typically with a DAW, you can mix and match whatever you want to use, but Luna is specifically coded to leverage the DSP pathways inside of your Thunderbolt Apollo. It uses, in fact, Luna uses the UAD Thunderbolt driver exclusively. So you have to have a Thunderbolt Apollo, and it's, as I mentioned earlier, Luna's Mac only as of now. And so it kind of has to be that way because, it's that tied in, right? These low latency paths, accelerated real-time monitoring utilizes the DSP pathways inside your Apollo. So it kind of has to be that way.
Okay. So any Thunderbolt Apollo. So that means that I could start out with the entry-level Apollo Solo and still have access to running Luna.
Yeah, any Apollo, any Thunderbolt Apollo on the Mac platform. So that's the previous generation Aero, and then its replacement Apollo Solo, as well as all of the twins, and of course the rack units as well.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Well, Drew, I want to thank you so much for the time you spent with us today, telling us about Luna, and particularly Luna 1.1, and about how it's possible to leverage the DSP power inside of the Apollo hardware in a new way to be able to take advantage of that for your recording productions. So if you're interested in finding out more about any Universal Audio products or perhaps purchasing one, you can head on over to americanmusical.com.